There are people who plan their career paths to the T. They know exactly where they'll be in the next 5 to 10 years. They know what they want out of their professions. Yet, there are others who just go with the flow with no fixed plans of what they want to do in their careers. Meet Raj, not the Raj Malhotra of Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge. We are referring to Rajgopal SV, Principal at Health Information Technology and Clinical Research Giant, IQVIA, formerly Quintiles and IMS Health. Raj comes with rich consulting experience, having helped technology companies with their growth strategy, customer experience, organizational effectiveness, and performance improvements. He has also hugely contributed towards digital transformation of many Indian SMEs.
Raj, welcome to Content Ed, the podcast on all things content. It's a great honor to have you here today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Welcome to episode 5 of Content Ed. We bring you Raj in conversation with our CEO Padmaja Narsipur on his 17 plus years of experience across domains like manufacturing, consumer goods, technology, and life sciences. What made this maverick with a pedigreed IIT and IIM background veer from working abroad to entrepreneurship back home to leadership positions in large MNCs?
Your LinkedIn profile shows that you've had a long run with the diverse sets of companies. I saw biomedical, automotive, aerospace, pharma, and now you're in a senior position at IQVIA India. So can you tell us about the underlying thread or the underlying vision behind all these different career moves?
I like to say that there is a thread, but I don't think there is any thread at all. I think after working for about 17, 18 years, I've realized that career is like one of the most non-linear things in life. I did my IIT. I chose to pursue for IIT, but it was not really a choice. Everybody in my school was trying, so I also tried. Then, on counseling day, people said, "Oh, for your rank, you'll get mechanical engineering." And I didn't have a clue what mechanical engineering was. But all of my friends were, going to IIT Madras. So I said, I'll also go with them. So it's not really a choice, right? So you did engineering. But okay, so I liked a lot of the engineering stuff that I learned. And like most people in IIT Madras, the day you enter the campus, the first thing that's told to you is, you should start preparing for applying to go to US. Now that's the sort of you work 4 years so that you can land in the US. That's one of the, in fact, if I remember in my batch of about 350 people, there was just one guy who chose to stay back in India, and he's actually now working in ISRO.
Okay.
Right? So the true purpose for which IIT was established, the success is 1 out of 350, if you look at it in that fashion. So I also went abroad. But it's when I went abroad is where, the first time in my life, I had to actually choose what to study. Because in the US, the system is you have to choose your own, you have to stitch together your own electives. I have never chosen in my life. So I didn't know what to do. So I dropped.
Oh, okay.
And then I said, what do I do now? I'm here in the US. What should I do? So I tied up with a company which sort of got me assignments in different places. And that was fun. Again, there was this choice, right? I'd again choose sort of, what to do in life. And I said, let me try a hand at this whole startup, ecosystem, which was then budding in Bangalore about 10 years back. And I had a chance to work with a company called Pharmark in Bangalore. It was a startup then, and a great guy, Amit Sadana, who's a CEO, co-founder of the company. So we grew very rapidly. It was a fantastic experience. Learned a lot about how do you run a business, things like that. Then Pharmark got acquired by what is now IQVIA.
Okay.
Right? And but back then there was some sort of structural changes. In most acquisitions, it's the leadership which takes a hit. So I sort of found myself without a clear role. So I decided, okay, let me go out and try something on my own. So the point I'm trying to make is a lot of these things are not planned. It happens, life happens to you, and then you respond.
Correct.
So the diversity you see, a large part of it is a response to what life threw at me. So it's not really that I said, okay, I will first start working in biomedical, then I will go to automotive, then I will go to pharma. It's not like that. It's just that these things kept coming to me and I reacted. Right. So, but I think it has helped me in terms of the ability to pick things up very fast. Something new that's thrown. For example, the role that I'm doing now in digital health. I've been exposed to technology before, but the intersection of healthcare and technology was new to me. It allowed me to sort of pick up things quickly and see patterns. I would say that is the probably one of the learnings of having such a diverse career.
I read a statistic that India produces 15 lakh engineers a year for a $2 trillion economy. Whereas the US, which is, I think it's an $8 trillion economy, it's producing 1.2 lakh engineers a year. So we don't really need the 15 lakh engineers. Whereas they could be going into all sorts of different things. What is your view about this? Where is the gap and why is it persisting in our country?
See, I think it's a very complex question, and it's really the three idiots kind of question, right? A lot of things. First is, if you look at outside of engineering or medical, you have very few institutions of very good quality. So let's say you say, I want to study law. You probably have 4 or 5 very good law colleges in India with a total capacity of, I don't know, maybe 500, 600. Right? It's a drop in the ocean. Suppose someone says, I want to do economics. Same thing, you have probably 4 or 5 really good economics colleges with, again, the capacity of a few hundreds or maybe a few thousands. So there is a shortage of quality institutions in the outside of engineering and medical. I think that's one. So even if I want to pursue something, my choices are limited. I think that's probably one area. Second thing is the selection system. Right? I mean, I have been through the IIT selection system. I've been through the IIM selection system. It optimizes one trait, which is very high, quantitative aptitude. That's really what it tries to filter, which is just one trait you require to be a successful engineer or to be a successful manager. I mean, if I have to design, if somebody said, redesign a car, quantitative aptitude is just one element to redesign a car, right? You need to be creative. You need to have a sense of, user experience.
Correct.
Right? You need to have a sense of sustainability, materials. You're not really choosing people with all those traits.
Correct.
If you look at, for example, National Institute of Design, they have a very different selection process. So they have a test, but they ask you to bring your portfolio, which means they look for some kind of design aptitude. They have an essay on gauging your design philosophy. They have a studio test where they ask you to design something, and a combination of all this decides who gets into NID or not. They do it for a group, sort of a batch size of about 60 people. But at least those 60 people are guaranteed to be, good designers because they come with certain design. If I ask in IIT how many people have the engineering aptitude, or in IIM how many have the managerial aptitude, I'm not sure what the answer is, but I'm sure it will not be in the a majority.
Thousands.
So the selection system is another issue. The last is, of course, what they teach you in the course itself.
How much does a good college matter? For example, you said there are only a handful of good colleges, right? If you look at the US, for example, there are the Ivy Leagues, and then there are the, tier 1, tier 2 colleges and so on.
Yeah.
Here we have this huge supply, and industry is also our economy is not that big yet, although it's getting bigger. How much does it matter whether you come from, let's say, like a UVC versus, I don't know, another engineering college which doesn't have that pedigree, or even an IIT versus a regular engineering college? How much does it matter? Especially now you're sitting in an employer's position. Do you look at their resume and say, okay, this is an IIT person, and call them automatically to an interview?
See, I don't do that. In fact, even when I introduce myself to others, I don't typically say that I'm from IIT or IIM. I say that I'm engineering background and I have done my MBA. That's how I describe it. Because what's happened is, unfortunately, the IIT-IIM has become like an elitist tag, right? That was not the intent of setting up these institutions in the first place. I mean, the IIM was set up, for example, to staff administrative capacity in public sector units because there was a severe shortage of that kind of capacity. IIT was done for research. So it was not with elitist aims at all. It was done with very, very, pluralistic aims, but it's become like that. But it's become like that because of the entrance procedure. I mean, only when 1% or less of those who apply for an exam, get through, you tend to develop a certain, sort of attitude that you're better than the rest 99%. But leaving that aside, right? There will always be bright students. As I said, if you have the engineering aptitude and you go to a non-IIT college, and obviously you are going to go out of your way to hone that aptitude. You're going to do projects. You are going to do projects in the college. You're going to do projects outside the classroom, and you will become a good engineer. And because you become a good engineer, you will get good engineering opportunities. A good college is one which has good talented professors, teachers. So that's one. The second is, I think the company also matters. I think it's important to be in a place where at least your circle, maybe not the entire batch, but your circle of friends are motivated, are hardworking. They bring the right view to studies and life in general. You want to be in a good company because the company also has a huge influence. So for me, a good college is one that ticks these two. Now, it's not necessary that those have to be IITs and IIMs. They could be other kinds of institutions. But for me, that's the parameter. That whatever we study, we have to make sure that we get into colleges which tick these two boxes.
What is health? The dictionary defines health as the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social well-being of an individual. Healthcare in the yesteryears was primarily administered by midwives, herbalists, and people who were called faith healers. While common ailments such as cold and cough were accepted as part of regular existence, disabling diseases were looked at differently. They were thought to be of supernatural origin. Treatments were given to the supernatural rather than to the disease itself. Well, thankfully, we have come a long way from that. Did you know that it was from India that the concepts of medical diagnosis, prognosis, and advanced medical ethics were introduced to the world? Sushruta, who is known as the father of Indian medicine, listed hundreds of herbal remedies based on years of extensive experiments during his time in the 6th century BC. Medicines and healthcare, as we know it today, have completely evolved since then. The increase in anatomical knowledge and exposure to rapidly progressing technology have paved way to many a discovery in medicine and treatments administered to patients worldwide.
Lifestyle diseases
Yes.
are now overcoming the acute kind of
Yeah.
diseases that used to be very prevalent in emerging markets. Why do you think that's happening? That's an alarming fact, by the way.
Yeah.
So why do you think this is happening?
Well, I mean, I think the one-word answer is, of course, the changing lifestyles and changing environmental conditions. We are exposed to more sort of chemicals and pollutants today than, let's say, 30 years back. The diet has undergone a huge modification. For example, I was just talking to my father-in-law who was saying that even if you go back like to when he was young, he grew up in rural Tamil Nadu, white rice was not a big part of their diet. It was eaten on certain occasions. It was mostly millet-based diets, millets that were grown locally. That was the sort of predominant diet base. Now, almost if you look at Tamil Nadu, people just assume that white rice is the de facto staple, whereas it is not. In 70 years, it's undergone a shift, right? And we know white rice is just very, very carbohydrate rich, and it's very low on fiber and things like that. This is just one. And there's so many other things, right? You have processed food, you have packaged food, then you have the whole exercise habits. People don't exercise. People sort of have more sedentary jobs.
Correct.
So I think the combination of all of this has resulted in the sudden explosion of diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular, BP, hypertension, so on and so forth. So the what we call in the healthcare parlance as chronic diseases.
Chronic disease.
Right, and then that's true across the world. I mean, it's true in Middle East. It's even true in large parts of Africa. The same things are happening there. So yeah, I mean that's sort of one of the biggest reasons why this is happening. Cancer, of course, is a little special case. Yes, there is a lot of these chemicals and pollution that's coming in, but then somewhere the genetics also plays a role. It's still a very evolving science, but yeah, by and large, the chronic is sort of driven by these kinds of lifestyle.
How deep is technology penetration? Is it really effective in healthcare delivery?
So in healthcare, not yet. See, the technology penetration is there in terms of, let's say, smartphone access or digital media access or internet connectivity. So that barrier has been broken because of large investments by the government and policies and things like that. What is required is now to use that infrastructure to then bring the healthcare innovations. And what you find typically is that for most of these patients, there are two big influencers. One is the doctor itself. I mean, if the doctor says something, it will get done. And the second is the sort of the family, the caregivers. So a lot of education through the doctor and through the caregiver is needed to adopt some of these solutions. So it's a slow process. And but definitely the trend is positive. Maybe today the extent to which a rural patient is using technology to monitor their health or to monitor their medication consumption is probably very, very low. But in general, in terms of for example, people have just the very first thing that most people do is just go online and search about their disease. And that's the first step that they start taking. So suppose a doctor says you have diabetes, they just go to Google and type diabetes. Right? That's the first step that they do. It's then as they get more and more mature, they start exploring other. The next thing you might do is you might stumble upon certain blogs or patient communities which are actively discussing about diseases.
Sure.
Then the next thing you might do is you might start looking at different types of doctors and figuring out different types of medication. And then finally you might say, okay, let me download this app. There is a journey, there's a progression, but I think we will get there. I think the trend is definitely, and there's a lot of push by the ecosystem. So governments are pushing it, companies are pushing it, doctors know that something has to be done, and the insurance companies are pushing for it. So the institutions are pushing for it, and the infrastructure is there. So I think the ingredients are there for a good journey. I think it's just a matter of time.
Curation of content is so important, as important maybe as creation itself.
Yeah.
Because the internet is a fount of information now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, much of it is false or fake.
Correct.
There's even all these urban myths. When it comes to diabetes, for example, we get all these WhatsApp forwards of some berry or root making a difference.
Right.
So what is your commentary on that, about the content curation aspect of it?
See, I think it has to be done in a very structured fashion, and it has to be done in a very collaborative fashion. For example, you should bring the doctor into this. So the doctor cannot be left out of this. I mean, even it can be patient oriented, but the doctor has to be brought in. So for example, you might have to work with a medical association, or you might have to work with a panel of doctors to say, can you put us in touch with patients who have been through this journey and whom you think have successfully managed the disease because they have followed the right regime. And then you have to, build the content from there. It cannot be, I will just, scrape content from somewhere and it cannot be like that. Or it has to be a community that is nurtured by people who are very credible.
In your experience, how tech savvy or digital world savvy are doctors here in India or even the other emerging markets?
Yeah.
Are they able to make that connect that they need to sort of almost be thought leaders in the space to produce or curate content, to use that content to educate their patients and the community? What has your experience been like?
See, I think the intent is there, right? So we do a lot of patient journey mappings for most of whenever we develop a solution, right? And so one of the one of the ingredients of that is we actually immerse ourselves into the care journey. We act as patients and we go and talk to doctors, we talk to other patients. There are a lot of areas where doctors definitely have the intent. So, a recent example, we were investigating this skin problem called eczema. It affects children. It sort of develops a very severe rash. Now, it was very interesting when we talked to doctors, and we talked to doctors it's not metro, right? We went to Mysore, we went to Tumkur. It's all over the place. They were saying that when the child is diagnosed with eczema, typically they pick it up in the young age. There are certain precautions prescribed for the child. Don't play in dust, keep the part covered. If you're sweating a lot, hold back. They said the parents have a very tough time having this conversation with the child, right? Because you are asking the child to hold back from its natural behavior,
Correct.
right? And most parents are not skilled to have this conversation. You're not naturally articulate. So you need that kind of counseling support. And I don't have that infrastructure. So I don't have like a counselor sitting in my clinic who can tell the parents how to talk to the child. So if there's some way I could do, and I don't have the time because I have 50 patients.
Correct.
Right. So, but this is an unmet need, right? We need this because otherwise, what happens? The child doesn't follow, and it gets worse, right? So the intent is. This is just one example. The intent is clearly there, even in cancer, right? Clearly, there's a lot of psychological counseling because it's a long, drawn-out process. Some of the therapy areas have they take a lot of, for example, if you take chemotherapy, a lot of effects on the body.
Side effects.
You may lose weight, you may lose hair and all of that, right? So there's counseling that is needed. Now, the large hospitals might be able to invest in that kind of psychological counseling. Some of the others may not. But the doctors will acknowledge always that they will say that it is needed, it is important, and they recognize the importance. What they are not capable of is creating digital solutions themselves to do this.
Correct.
That they are not, and I don't think it's too much to expect from them because what's needed from them is the clinical expertise.
Correct.
You cannot ask digital expertise from doctors.
Sure.
So it's the onus of the institutions, the hospitals, the pharma companies, and then the insurance companies and the governments.
Thank you, Raj, for talking to us today. I think the promise of health tech is still not felt on the ground in many places, but companies like yours are doing a lot to bridge that gap between where we can go and where we are right now. So really thankful for you having come here and talking to us today.
That was an interesting conversation with a maverick leader. Raj's experiences show us that sometimes the best paths are not those that are carefully planned and executed. We may sometimes be better off fully immersing ourselves in the experiences that life throws at us, constantly learning and becoming better versions of ourselves. Till we meet again, adios from Content Ed.